How's it going, guys? This is Brian over here with the Mustard and Mayo, and this is going to be part 3 of working on the Previa. I think there's going to be just one more part after this. We've got a few more parts coming in. So I actually just got a phone call from Mike Johnson Toyota over here in Hickory, North Carolina. I came here about 3 days ago and ordered some parts, one of which was actually on kind of like a back order or like a nationwide shortage or something like that. But they were able to get it in within about 3 days. And so everything just came in. So I'm gonna go in and grab the parts and we'll kind of talk about what we're gonna work on today. Yep, they've got a Gazoo Racing Super over here. Saw it when I was here to actually order the parts. Pretty good looking ride. All right, so they had all my parts. So here's kind of the breakdown of what we've got. So this is the O-ring that goes at the end of that distributor, which mine was definitely failed because you can actually see this is a regular traditional O-ring. And if you go back and reference the video previous, you can actually see where mine's pretty much squared off on the ends. So it was definitely leaking from there. It had lost its kind of gasket material. You can see here's kind of the part number up here. So I'll leave that for a second. Next part is the Toyota OEM valve cover. Again, there's the part number there for it. And I've just heard that all of the aftermarket gaskets, which is probably what's on my van right now, are a little less reliable and don't last as long. So this should hopefully fix that up once and for all. And then here is the vent tube that I broke, which was actually the part that took the longest to get here. And the reason why this is so difficult to replace or find is because it actually has this different size piece here on the end of it. I mean, the inner diameter where the tube goes in is the same, but the way this fits over the PCV is kind of specific. So I mean, I might have just been able to use a regular hose, but I wanted to make sure it was done right. So now we've got all these 3 pieces. All right, so we are back with the van and we've got everything ready to go and laid out and ready to go back in. So you can see we've got the new wires here. We've already put the new plugs in. We put the NGKs in there, all 4. Here is the original distributor. And as you can see, here is the O-ring that we are replacing. Now we're gonna also go ahead and replace the one that's on this side where the cap is. You can just kind of see that O-ring should be round and you can see it's squared off. So that thing is definitely worn out and ready to be replaced. We're also just gonna clean this up. You can just see how nasty gunked up it is. That's why I've got the brush as well as the O-ring pick and a nice shop towel just to kind of scrub things down, as well as some degreaser. So we'll get all this cleaned up and ready to go back in. You can see it's just nasty, horribly nasty. I'm also gonna check, I think this cap and rotor button's probably gonna be all right, but I do have those here if I wanna go ahead and replace those. Here is the Toyota FIPG or FIPG or the seal packing, and that's gonna be for just sealing off a couple of the spots as indicated on the Toyota repair manual for the valve cover. And then of course here is the new gaskets and the new hose, breather hose and stuff like that that we ordered from Toyota. And then these are the 2 rubber hoses that came off the distributor, and these were absolutely just trashed. You can kind of see, especially this one. This one was really hard and I basically had to cut it to get it off. So I just went ahead and got some new fuel line, and I'll obviously cut this down and get those replaced on here and here. And then we'll basically get that put back in. And then once I put the distributor back in and make sure I've got the wires hooked up correctly, then I'm gonna finish up with doing the valve cover job, mainly just because the distributor is a little bit easier to access and see when the valve cover's off. So once we get the distributor in, then we're gonna come back through and actually put the valve cover on and kind of get everything buttoned up and obviously get the spark plug wires put back where they should be. Distributor is just a little bit easier to access when you can actually see things here. You can even see where the tooth for the distributor goes in. So it's just gonna be a little bit easier to line up. So that's just the way we're gonna kind of go about it. So let's just go ahead and get working on this. And once I get the distributor in or get to some sort of a stopping point, then I'll kind of show you all where we're at. All right, so the distributor is back in. You can see I got it cleaned up pretty good. You can actually see there's a little bit of polish there on the tray down below. I decided this time to actually put the cap on first and make sure everything was tightened up there before I put it back on. I just left the wires off. That'll be the last thing to be installed. I can honestly say, out of everything I've worked on this van so far, and I think a lot of people would agree, getting this distributor in and out is probably the worst part of working on this van, at least for me to date. Mainly just because it's the one area where you just really don't have a whole lot of room to work around. And you've got both of the... Let's get up underneath it here. You have both of the bolts on the back side of this. So you've got the one that's there on the bottom, you can see with the adjuster, and then there's one up there on the top, kind of just over that hose. And then speaking of hoses, you do have these two, I guess there's some sort of vacuum lines that come off of that, or maybe some sort of like an oil breathers PCV type thing. They were dry when I took the old ones off. These are the ones, especially that little one on the top right, kind of in the middle right there. Those are the ones that get super stuck. And then again, just working around this really cramped area is not fun with wrenches and stuff like that. Now you can see there's a ground wire that has been disconnected that I need to re-hook up right there before everything's said and done. So just for people that are paying attention. But this is in. And then obviously I've started to hook up the spark plug wires, at least the one coming from the igniter there. I'm gonna wait till I've got the valve cover on, and then I'll actually replace all of the spark plug wires in sequence, since I still have them attached to the cap sitting over there. So that's where we are. Next thing we're gonna do is gonna start putting this valve cover back together. So I'm just gonna have to grease up or seal up those few corners there, and then we'll get that put on, and then that should go pretty quickly. All right, and the valve cover is back in. Pretty much everything is hooked up right now. The only things that I've left off are the spark plug well cover, which is just 310 millimeters. But I just wanted to show you that we got everything in. I did decide to go ahead. I've seen a lot of people talking about adding washers to these valve cover bolts, just to kind of add a little bit more clamping or surface area onto that valve cover, so it just kind of stays, you know, grips it a little bit tighter. So I did that little trick as well. You can see we've got the new spark plug wires in. I did not replace the tube seals on this valve cover since I was not leaking from there. It was actually already dry there, and these tube seals look like they were replaced and in good shape. And it looks like it's kind of a pain to replace. I'm just gonna leave it like that. And again, the new wires are in. Everything is hooked up back at the distributor. We've got the plugs hooked up. We've got the hoses hooked up. We've got everything ready down there. So I did leave the two adjuster bolts, the two, I think they're 12 millimeters on the top and side there. I left those loose. I centered the distributor for now, but I figured once I actually crank it up, I'll make sure that the timing on the distributor is smooth and runs great, and then I'll lock those two things down. We should be good to go. We put the little bit of Toyota sealant there on the side, and then as well back there in that kind of corner next to the distributor housing. So we replaced all of that, and we should be good to go. All right, she is back together and back on the ground. We've got the valve cover on. I even went ahead and put the seat in, as well as the cover for the engine. Everything's torqued. Checked everything kind of one last time. Tightened down the distributor. Put the cap back on the front wheel. Made sure everything's torqued down there. Now let's make sure that it still turns over. So moment of truth. Let's see if we actually got anything accomplished here, made things worse. First hit. Did not have to give it any gas whatsoever, which is improvement from how it's been. Now you can clearly hear the massive exhaust leak going on. And that is from back here. All right, and that finishes things up for the third update. Now, of course, you heard the exhaust leak. That's the last thing I really need to do to kind of get finished with this phase of things. I'm not really going to videotape that. I'm going to have to take this to a exhaust shop or somebody that can weld tomorrow to have them actually replace that rear flange and make sure everything is sealed up so it doesn't sound like that thing that just drove by. So we'll hopefully get that done tomorrow. Tomorrow's a Sunday, so it just depends on who's open. If it has to get done on Monday, that's fine too. But either way, the next couple days we'll get that done. Then the next big update we're going to have is I have KYB struts for the front and shocks for the rear that are already on order, as well as Espalier lowering springs And both of these I picked up brand new from a member of the Previa forums, so a huge shout out to him. You can't buy Espalier springs anymore, and what I like is they're supposed to give about an inch and a half drop on the van, which is like the perfect spot that I'm wanting to be at. There's other ones like the RSR springs that lower it like 2 inches, and while I think it looks good, it's just I've heard horror stories about driving on those springs every single day, especially if I want to actually put people and stuff like that in here. I really only go like maybe an inch or inch and a half, just to make sure that there's still some suspension travel, and so it's not super stiff, and that we can still, you know, go on some gravel roads and not worry about every single freaking rock, you know, trying to scrape up the underside of the van. So again, thanks everybody for checking out these videos. I hope there was something useful in it. I'm really looking forward to not having any oil leaks going forward. I feel really good about the install on that. It was actually pretty easy, pretty straightforward, minus that stupid distributor thing. So yeah, stay tuned for the next video, and then we'll just do a couple little things, and then we'll have the big announcement. So thanks again. Have a great day.